My fiancée replaced me in her family photos with her ex, so I left the wedding planner group chat and watched her plan collapse public Liam, a 29-year-old guy. And this all went down last year. I was engaged to a woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, but looking back, the warning signs were always there. I just chose to ignore them. From the very first time I met her family, I felt like an intruder. They were polite, sure smiles, handshakes, all the surface-level stuff. But underneath, there was this coldness, a kind of detachment. Her mother always introduced me like, "This is her fiancé," never using my name. Her dad would make backhanded comments like, "Well, her last boyfriend was a lawyer. But hey, you seem stable?" I laughed it off. Told myself they'd warm up eventually. That if I just kept showing up, being kind, being helpful, they'd accept me. But they didn't no matter what I did, helping clean up after dinners, buying thoughtful gifts, attending every family event, never felt included. I was always seated at the edge of the table, both literally and figuratively. Her ex's name came up constantly, especially from her dad. "Remember when Brian took you to that cabin? He was such a great cook." Or "Brian knew how to fix anything, do you think you could take a look at the sink?" I bit my tongue every single time. I'd talk to my fiancée about it, and she'd just brush it off. "They're stuck in the past, babe. Don't take it personally. I love you, and that's all that matters." I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her, because the alternative that I was never going to be good enough for the people who would become my family was just too painful to face. But the truth? I wasn't paranoid. I was just starting to see the cracks in the fairy tale, and the deeper I fell in love with her, the more I started to realize I might be the only one actually planning to stay. A few weeks after our engagement, her mom invited us over for brunch. It was supposed to be light and celebratory mimosas, fruit bowls, talk about venues. I showed up wearing a smile and carrying pastries from her mom's favorite bakery, just hoping maybe that day would feel different, that maybe I'd finally be embraced like part of the family. Halfway through the meal, her mom pulled out her phone and said, "We've been gathering old photos for the wedding slideshow." She started flipping through images on her screen photos of my fiancé as a child, graduation pics, family holidays, and then I saw it. A photo of her at prom, smiling in a red dress, except the guy next to her wasn't blurred or cropped. It was her ex. And worse, my face had been photoshopped out and replaced with his same photo. Same pose, just his face, edited in cleanly, casually. I felt my stomach drop. I blinked, thinking maybe I imagined it. But when I looked again, it was still there. "Wait," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Was that photoshopped?" Her mom laughed, sipping her coffee like nothing was wrong. "Oh, don't be so sensitive, it's just a joke. Brian's practically family." My fiancée chuckled awkwardly and shook her head, but she didn't defend me. She didn't say it was wrong. She didn't even look embarrassed. I sat there, frozen. Everyone moved on like it was funny, like my place in her life was up for interpretation. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing her mom's voice. Just a joke. But what kind of family jokes about replacing the groom? What kind of bride laughs along? I stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering, was I marrying her? Or marrying into a past I could never compete with? A week later, we were sitting on the couch, laptops open, finalizing details for our wedding website. She handed me the login to our shared folder where all the engagement photos were stored. I was supposed to help pick the ones we'd use for the Our Story section. It was late, and she was half asleep next to me with her head resting on a pillow, trusting me to sort through everything at first. Everything looked normal. The first batch of photos were the ones we took downtown, me in a navy blazer, her in that flowy white dress she loved. I smiled, remembering how nervous I'd been proposing just days before that shoot. But then I clicked on a subfolder labeled Final Edits, and my stomach turned cold. In 3 of the main photos we had both loved my face had been replaced. Not cropped, not blurred, replaced. Same setting, same outfits, same lighting. But in those edited versions, his face, her ex's, was staring back at her. I sat up straighter, hoping maybe I was imagining it. I flipped between the original and the edit. No doubt it was him, the one her dad always raved about, the one her mom photoshopped into old pictures, and now, apparently, the one who belonged in our engagement album. She was still dozing. I whispered, "Babe, who edited these?" She blinked awake and squinted at the screen. Her reaction? "Oh my God, that's so weird. I think my cousin did that as a prank." Ignore it. A prank. She didn't look shocked, just mildly annoyed, like it was an inconvenience I had discovered it. I didn't argue. I just nodded, pretending to accept her answer. But deep down, something in me shifted. That wasn't just a prank. That was a message, and I wasn't sure who it was meant to humiliate Marmee. Or her. After the engagement album incident, I couldn't unsee it anymore. The red flags weren't subtle. They were practically neon. Every time we visited her parents, it was like walking into a shrine for a man who didn't even live there anymore. Her dad would casually mention her ex like he was still part of their lives. "Brian took care of that plumbing issue once. Remember that, sweetheart?" Or, "Brian always brought your mom flowers, real gentleman." I was sitting right there. I'd brought flowers that day, but it didn't matter. In their eyes, I wasn't Brian. That was the problem. Then came the real kicker. Her sister told me, laughing over wine, that Brian still came around sometimes. "Just to hang out," she said. "He even stayed over last Thanksgiving. You know, before you guys got serious?" I tried to laugh along, but my heart was racing. He stayed over. During a holiday, I confronted my fiancée later that night. "Why didn't you tell me he still talks to your family?" She shrugged, brushing her hair out of her face. "Because it's not a big deal. He's just a family friend now. My parents love him. I can't control that." I stood there, arms crossed, trying to hide the lump in my throat. "You know, this isn't normal, right?" She looked at me like I was the problem. "It's only weird if you make it weird," she said. But I didn't make it weird. They did. They made me feel like a placeholder, like I was just the safe option. A stand-in until the real groom returned. And every comparison, every nostalgic memory they brought up, chipped away at my confidence until I didn't know if I was her fiancé, or just a name they'd eventually erase from the photo albums. To Dot, we were finalizing vendor payments when she asked me to double-check a receipt. In our shared Google Drive, it was something we'd been using for months, nothing unusual, but as I was scrolling through folders, one caught my eye. It was buried beneath budget spreadsheets and menu PDFs, labeled innocently as memories. Curious, I clicked. Inside were dozens of photos I had never seen before. Not old memories. Not high school or college throwbacks. These were recent. Her and her ex Brian at a farmer's market, at a bookstore, laughing in a coffee shop I recognized as the one we went to together weekly. He had his arm around her in every single shot. They weren't accidental. These weren't random group photos. They were posed, intimate, intentional. I clicked on the details of one of their faces, inches apart on a park bench. The timestamp read, 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, she had told me she was out with her sister. That was the same day I'd sent her flowers because she said she was having a bad mental health day. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, my hands shaking. I could feel my chest tightening, like I was suffocating on betrayal. She came into the room while I was still looking at them. I didn't say a word. I just turned the screen toward her. She looked at it for a beat too long before whispering, "I didn't upload those. Someone must have shared that folder with me." Her voice cracked at the end, but her face was unreadable. I didn't push, not yet. I just closed the laptop and stood up, quietly excusing myself because suddenly I wasn't just competing with a ghost from her past anymore. I was living in his shadow in real time. We had a group chat with her family and the wedding planner. It started off innocent, just a place to coordinate RSVPs, vendor lists, and random reminders. But somewhere along the way, it became a running commentary on the wedding that felt less like planning and more like performance, one where I was always the afterthought. One night, I was scrolling through the chat before bed when her sister dropped a meme. A bride walking down the aisle with the caption, "Can't wait to see Brian walk her down instead." It was a joke. To them, to me, it was a dagger. What stunned me wasn't even the post-it, was the reaction. Her mom replied with a string of laughing emojis. Her cousin added, "Too bad he's not the groom." And my fiancée, she replied with, I stared at the screen, stunned. Not a single "hey, that's not funny." Not even a mild defense. Just silence, or worse, agreement masked as humor. My name was never mentioned, but I was tagged in the message. I sat there, thumb hovering over the keyboard, unsure what to type. Then I realized I didn't owe them a reaction. I didn't owe them anything. Without saying a word, I scrolled up, tapped the group info, and hit leave chat. No dramatic exit. No angry message, just gone. My fiancée texted me a few minutes later. "Babe, why'd you leave the chat?" I didn't reply, because in that moment, it became painfully clear. They weren't planning a wedding with me. They were planning a wedding around me, like I was some accessory that could be swapped out at any time. And somewhere deep down, I think they already had. There was no grand announcement, no angry breakup post, no yelling match in a restaurant, just quiet, deliberate steps. I started with the photographer, my pick, someone I'd gone to college with. I emailed him and said I was pulling out. No explanation. Then the venue deposit. I called, canceled my portion, and let them know I wouldn't be attending. My groomsmen. I sent a group text. "You won't need the suits. I'm out." Nobody asked many questions. I think they sensed it. She didn't. She was too busy obsessing over flower arrangements and signature cocktail names with her mom. Too distracted by her Pinterest board and her seating chart, drama to notice that I hadn't RSVP'd to my own wedding, and I let her keep planning. That was the point I wanted. Her to see what it felt like to build something without a foundation. To plan a moment around a man who no longer existed in the frame. I stopped answering her calls during the day. I gave short, vague replies. I told her I was stressed with work, tired, just needed space, and still, she didn't see it. Or maybe she didn't want to see it. Maybe she was so caught up in the fantasy of the day that she forgot a wedding isn't a show, it's a promise. And I couldn't make one with someone who didn't. Even notice when I stopped being there, I was watching from the sidelines, as she built a fairy tale. But I wasn't the prince, I was the placeholder. And I wanted her to realize that, on her own dot, it was 2 weeks. Before the wedding, when her illusion finally cracked, she texted me out of nowhere. "Hey babe, can you confirm the limo booking? I need to finalize it with the planner." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. I canceled it. Weeks ago, the typing bubble popped up, disappeared, popped up again. Then came the call, I let it ring. Then came the next text. "What do you mean canceled? What's going on?" I finally answered, calmly flat. I backed out. From everything. My names, off the vendors, off the deposits. You didn't notice. There was silence on the other end of the line for a few seconds. Then frantic talking, her voice shaky. "Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you tell me?" "We have a wedding," I interrupted. "Do we?" She got quiet again. That's when I brought it up. The group chat meme. The engagement photo edits. The shared drive folder. All of it, one by one. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just listed. She didn't deny any of it. She didn't even try to make up a lie. All she said, her voice barely a whisper, was, "I didn't think it mattered. You know I love you." And that's when I knew, because love isn't quiet when someone is being replaced. Love doesn't let you feel like the second option while everyone else makes it clear who they prefer. I hung up the phone that night with a strange sense of peace. Because for the first time since our engagement, I was finally starting to see the truth, and I had no intention of standing at that altar. It all came crashing down faster than I expected the next morning. Her Facebook status changed from engaged to single. No caption, no explanation, just a silent scream into the algorithm. And then the texts started coming in. Mutual friends, old classmates, even distant cousins asking, "What happened? Is the wedding off? Did you cheat?" Apparently, her family wasted no time in trying to spin the narrative. She was blindsided. I had cold feet. Her mom even told someone I was emotionally unstable. But the internet has a funny way of leveling the field. I hadn't planned to say anything publicly. I wasn't interested in airing dirty laundry. But one of my close friends who had seen the memes in the group chat had screenshots. He shared them in a private Reddit thread. Then someone else posted the edited engagement photos. And before long, a quiet storm turned into a viral monsoon. The wedding planner, who had been suspiciously silent during this whole saga, made a subtle post on Instagram. "I no longer represent clients who hide important truths. Professional integrity matters." Vendors started commenting on her wedding Pinterest board. Deposit refunded due to cancellation by groom. Date reopened contact for booking. Her fantasy unraveled publicly. The dream wedding she curated for months turned into a digital wasteland. Comments flooded her posts. People weren't buying her version anymore. Her sister tried to clap back, but someone dropped the photo album link in the thread. The edit, the folder, the meme, receipts don't lie, and the truth. The wedding wasn't canceled because of cold feet. It was canceled because I finally stood up and walked away from a story where I was never meant to be the main character. It was 4 days after the social media storm when she showed up, unannounced, no text, no warning. I heard the knock just after midnight, slow, hesitant. I opened the door, and there she was, makeup smeared, hoodie pulled over her head, hair clinging to her face from the rain. Her eyes were red. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at me like she was trying to figure out if I was still hers. Then, quietly, "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. She sat on the couch like she was made of glass, arms wrapped around herself. For a moment, it was just silence between us, the kind that sits too heavy for comfort. Then the tears came, ugly, full-body sobs. I sat across from her, waiting. "I messed up," she choked out. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't say anything. It was just nostalgia. I missed what I thought I had. But I never stopped loving you." I stared at her, heart pounding in my chest, but not with love, not with longing, but with disbelief. I asked her if I had a secret folder of pictures with an ex, if I laughed at jokes about you being replaced, if my family called you a stand-in, would you still marry me? She froze, didn't speak, didn't even blink. Her silence answered everything. I needed to know. I stood up and walked toward the door. Holding it open, she looked at me like she was hoping for mercy. But I had none left to give. She left that night with no ring, no venue, no second chance, and no one standing by her side, because love doesn't survive in a house full of shadows at first. I was the villain. Her family wasted no time painting me as the runaway groom, the guy who bailed last minute, who couldn't handle real commitment. I heard that her mom called me emotionally fragile at brunch with their church group. Her sister posted some passive-aggressive quote about loyalty on Instagram. Even a few of our mutual friends seemed unsure what to believe. And honestly, for a day or two, I started to wonder if I had overreacted, if maybe I'd let pride ruin something fixable. But then, the thread exploded. The Reddit post with the screenshots, it went viral. Thousands of upvotes, hundreds of comments, people sharing their own stories, being made to feel like second choices, replaced emotionally, erased from their own relationships. One person wrote, "This is exactly why I left my ex-fiancée. She made me feel like I was just renting space until someone better came along." Others started defending me on social media too, people I hadn't spoken to in years. One guy DM'd me and said, "You did what most of us don't. Have the guts to walk away before becoming a ghost in your own wedding." Something shifted after that. I wasn't the villain anymore. I was the voice for people who stayed quiet too long, and suddenly, my side started to grow, louder, stronger, prouder, not just online, but inside me. I wasn't the scared, gaslit version of myself I had become during that engagement. I was remembering who I was before I let love turn me invisible. I didn't post anything spiteful. I didn't throw shade. I just kept moving forward, because the best part of choosing yourself, you stop needing everyone else too. It's been 8 months now. The wedding never happened. The invitations were never sent. Her Pinterest board's been deleted. Her social media went dark shortly after everything blew up. I haven't heard from her since that night on my doorstep. Honestly, I don't need to. I never got an apology, no text, no closure speech, no neatly packaged explanation. And for a while, that bothered me. I kept thinking, how can someone hurt you that deeply and never say sorry? But over time, I realized I was waiting for the wrong thing. An apology doesn't fix betrayal. It doesn't unedit photos. It doesn't unlaugh at group chat memes. It doesn't unmake you feel small in the eyes of the people who should have embraced. Healing didn't come in some dramatic epiphany. It came in little things. A peaceful breakfast without my stomach in knots. A quiet Sunday morning where I didn't dread a dinner. Invite a new relationships. Lo, she knows what happened. I told her everything, and she said something that stayed with me. You deserved to be someone's first choice. not someone's fix-it plan. And for the first time, I believed that. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I'm just free. Free from the pressure to perform, to win approval from people who were never rooting for me, to shrink myself just to fit into someone else's past. Sometimes people think revenge needs to be loud, explosive, public, but mine wasn't. My revenge was quiet, was walking away. It was letting the truth surface on its own. It was watching everything collapse, not with satisfaction, but with clarity. And now, when I think back to that group chat, to those edited pictures, to the way they all laughed while I was being erased, I just smile because I left the chat and I never looked back.